Good morning. I'm Grant Mitchell, Assistant Director Enterprise and Growth at South Staffordshire Council, and welcome to this morning's session. We've got a number of colleagues on the call, including the Leader of the Council, Councillor Edwards, and the Cabinet Member for Planning and Regulatory Services, Councillor Lees, a former retailer himself. I think he likes to still keep his hand in, which is why he's on this morning. The Council are committed to working with you to enable you to open safely, and I'll encourage our residents to shop safely and shop locally, and today's session is very much part of that. The session is called Are You Ready to Open, and is aimed at non-essential retail, close contact and outdoor hospitality businesses in advance of reopening your businesses on April the 12th. We ran some similar sessions on this last year in reopening, and the feedback we had from that was very positive from businesses, which is why we're running it again today, and we hope that this will give you some very useful and practical tips for advice on reopening safely. The session today will be run by Jasmine Thomas, who's Assistant Team Manager in our Environmental Health team, who led on working with businesses on reopening safely last year. If anybody's got any questions during the session, if you could post them in the chat box, and we will either pick them up during the session or pick them up at the end. And Jasmine is more than happy to answer those questions. If she's unable to have an answer for you today, then we will get back to you with the answer that you need. The advice and guidance on this from government is very detailed, so we might not have it to hand, but we can get it to you as quickly as we possibly can. And on that note, I'll stop and I'll hand over to Jasmine. Over to you, Jasmine.
Hello, thank you, Grant. My name's hello, thank you, Grant. My name's Jasmine Thomas from Environmental Health and licensing team. So what I'll do to start off is just try and share the presentation. I'll do it as a presentation. It's just so that you're not bored just listening to me, is what I normally find is useful. So I'll just share it. It might take a few minutes for the presentation to show up, so bear with us. Are you able to see the presentation? I must admit, Liz, I can't see you anywhere on here. So
that's now live, Jasmine.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so the session is going to be about the reopening of businesses and activities, and no earlier than the 12th of April. And that will be the step 2 of the reopening of businesses. And we do want businesses to reopen, but open safely as well. So it's important to us and as well as to you. So we do hope that businesses will reopen as per the dates set out in the roadmap, but also understand the factors that are behind those decisions. So I think it's useful to just sort of put into perspective where we were with lockdown 3. During lockdown 3, the rates were extremely high. I think over the last year or so, we've never seen infections and rates as high as they were in January and early February. The variant, whether it's the Kent variant or other variants, appear to be far more infectious, and the transmission or the spread of the virus was far greater. Airborne aerosols were still a problem and are still a problem, and breaking the infection cycle is vital. That is so important in order to stop the transmission and the virus rates increasing. More testing has certainly helped. 1 in 3 people who are asymptomatic basically will show no symptoms, so that means that they are able to spread the virus unknowingly, and testing really helps to identify those individuals, and that's all really important in breaking this infection cycle of the COVID virus. Vaccinations are going really well, and what all this means that the rates overall are falling, but it's really important to note that crucially controls that we've talked about, the face, hands and distance, is still needed. So step 2, which will start from the 12th of April at the earliest, talks about the rule of 6 or 2 households outside. And it'll allow the following businesses to reopen: all retail, personal care, close contact, outdoor hospitality, libraries, community centres, most outdoor attractions, indoor leisure for individual use, self-contained accommodation, children's activities, indoor parents and children's groups with up to 15 parents. So we're going to concentrate on retail, personal care and outdoor hospitality, but we will touch on some of the other matters as well. So what does 2 households outdoors mean, or what does a household actually mean? Well, a household will be anybody who's living in the same premises, property, and is one bubble. Anybody else who's part of that support bubble is then deemed to be as part of that household. So if you've got parents or grandparents or children who live individually or on their own, but they are part of your support bubble, or you are part of theirs, then that is classed as one household. So for all businesses, whatever the COVID guidance exists out there, remember that remember what you were required to do before lockdown. So every business is unique and different. One size will not fit all. So everything that you were doing beforehand, you still need to consider now, with a few other caveats as well. Different businesses will have different approaches. There'll be difference in activity. There'll be different in size of the business. The layout may be different. The facilities that you're doing, etc., will all allow your business to be very individual. But there are some common themes that you need to think about. So the measures that we're talking about aren't prescriptive. You need to be thinking about how flexible you can do those and think about different approaches, but with those themes in mind. So please be imaginative, be creative to think about how you can put those control measures in place. So these are going to be, I'm going to go through some common themes and priorities, because these are going to be common to all types of settings that we've talked about. And they will be important going forward to May the 17th, etc. as well. So if you haven't done your COVID risk assessments, then please go through these and refresh these. If you've got them, refresh them, go over them, review them. Go through and review all your COVID control measures. Now, if you haven't got any risk assessments, or you think, well, how am I going to do these? They're too complicated, or I don't know what I need to do. We have got some very simple templates that will assist you. They are very generic, but they are there. They are on our council website. We are going to review them and put some fresh ones on so that they are relevant for now. But they are available, and if you do want any of those, then please just ask. Whatever your control measures are, it's important to train and instruct all your staff in your reviewed controls. You just make sure that all your signage is renewed and clear. There is a business toolkit on our website, which the link is there, which we've got so many signage, direction signs that will help you in different colours, in different formats. Use them, use whichever ones are more appropriate for your type of business. Cleaning is vital, and it's going to be more important as ever. So that's hand washing, but also cleaning within the premises. And where relevant in indoor spaces, remind your customers to wear face coverings, and legally you are still required to have a sign displayed. Social distancing will still be important, and all of this means that all the common themes we're talking about should be about controls that you can actually put in practice, that they're not just paper-based. So we don't want something that's just stuck on the shelf and not relevant to what you're doing. Put those in place so that they are workable. And increasingly, we've found over the past few months how important ventilation is. It's absolutely key. And it's important that any ventilation, if you've got air conditioning in place, get that checked so that it's in good working order. Make sure doors and windows are openable. It's the only reason why outdoor activities and businesses have been allowed to reopen first, because ventilation and fresh air and and outside places are deemed to be safer. There is ventilation information and guidance that will help you in terms of what you need to do. NHS test and trace QR codes are still required, but not for retail. So if you're a retail business, you don't need those, except if you're a betting shop. If you haven't got a QR code or you need to review that, then go onto the website to get your create a QR code for your business. You need to think about procedures for your customers and staff if they've got coronavirus. What you shouldn't have are people attending your business who are symptomatic, because all that does is not help you as a business. So make sure you have systems in place. So if you're having customers in your premises, so if you're a hairdresser or a pub or a children's activity centre, you need to ask those questions in a friendly way, in a sensible, common sense way, or make sure that you're providing that information so customers know that if they've got symptoms, they shouldn't be coming. You need to think about staff and how you determine whether they've got symptoms, whether they're fit to come back to work. And if they're not, if they've got symptoms, then the self-isolation procedures that you should have in place. So in a way, get your premises ready for reopening. And in all of this, what we find, and certainly found last year, is communication with your customers is vital. So please use social media. Facebook has been extremely popular last year, and it's really helped businesses to get your messages and your rules to forward to your customers. We will always say, and it's a recommendation, because 1 in 3 people with the virus show no symptoms, it's useful for your staff to get tested. Certainly at the beginning when you're reopening, but we recommend that you get your staff tested twice a week. It's not a legal requirement, but it's certainly a good good practice. Get staff on board with this. It is quite easy to do. Local testing sites are available, and booking an appointment is quite straightforward as well. And we've provided you with a link to the Staffordshire County Council website, where all the local testing centres are listed. So getting ready to reopen isn't just about coronavirus. It's, as a business, you'll need to consider other matters as well. If your business has been closed for some time, there is a risk that any stagnant water in water pipes, etc., may have films of Legionella in them. So it's a good idea to sort of flush through all your hot and cold water systems as a basic. But if you want further advice, this guidance is fairly straightforward and simple to read, and will provide you with simple advice on what to do. So if we start off with outdoor hospitality, the main points of interest here is that it's outdoor settings only which are allowed to open. And the reason for that, as I said earlier, was that it's ventilation, it's outside, and outside areas are deemed to be less of a risk in terms of transmission. Still certain controls that are required to be done, because social distancing is going to be so important, but at least outdoor settings are deemed to be slightly safer, and that's why those are starting to reopen. We've been asked about how many people can we have within our beer gardens or outside areas. Well, to establish the capacity of your outside areas, you need to think about how many people can safely be seated. You need to think about the social distancing rules, the 2 metre, 1 metre plus that existed previously. You need to think about people coming and leaving your premises. You need to think about pinch points within your premises. And if you've got outside areas, you need to think about how staff are going to be ordering and serving food. So it'll be based on your individual business and site as to how many people you can safely accommodate in the outside areas. Social distancing rules are key. At the moment, the rule is that 6 people or 2 households can attend your premises as a group and sit together. So if you've got 6 people from different households, they can come sit as a group. If you've got 2 households, those 2 households can be, if you've got one household which has got 10 members and another household which has got another 10 members, potentially you can have 20 people sitting together as a group because 2 households are allowed to sit together. So, but we're also aware that people will try and get round this number. So you need to make sure that as a business, you ask your customers for confirmation of the numbers of people in their party on arrival so that you can manage that interaction between groups, because that's what unfortunately you will need to do. So individual groups shouldn't be interacting with each other because that will be deemed as a gathering. You will need to manage the outside areas to ensure that the different groups are not mixing. And the way that you can do that, practical advice is make sure you communicate that with your customers. So use signage on entry, advise them in outside areas, put signage up outside so that they're clear about what you are asking them to do. Have staff or security to manage these areas. But it's crucial that your customers know what you want them to do, because their behaviour will impact on you how successful your reopening will be. We'll talk about social distancing rules later as well. But for the moment, from the 12th of April, the idea is that it'll be table service only for ordering, service and payments. To assist, we ask, have you got the right equipment? Sometimes having handheld devices which relay the orders to the bar or the kitchen will assist, and will also assist with payment at the table. Now, payments have been agreed with the police licensing to be allowed. If you don't have the facilities to manage payment at the table, then customers will be allowed to go inside and pay at the bar. But you will need to manage this and have this documented in your risk assessments. The police are insisting that if that's the case, then you need to demonstrate how you're going to be managing that, because it does have an implication on your license, licensing conditions. There's no substantial meal needed. Customers don't need to wear a face covering whilst they're seated and eating and drinking outside. Face coverings will be needed when they leave the table and are going indoors. And staff will still need to wear face coverings when they're indoors and in close proximity to customers, generally indoors. The advice is that staff don't need to wear face coverings outside. However, we do recommend that they keep their face coverings on when moving in and out of premises, purely because they'll be constantly touching their face, which doesn't help. And depending on how many people are sat outside and groups, then it's also an additional safety measure for staff. Indoor toilet facilities, baby changing and baby feeding areas will be allowed to be accessible. So customers can go in and out. You will need to have clear signage and directions for this, and make sure all the hand washing facilities and sanitizers are available as well. If access is necessary through the premises to the outdoor areas, then this will be allowed. Customers can't stay indoors or congregate inside, unfortunately, even in poor weather. So sorry about that. Social distancing will still need to be managed in any smoking areas and smoking shelters. Generally, they're going there for smoking, but not for eating or drinking. So we're discouraging any taking of drinks to the smoking shelter, even if you've got tables there. If customers see one person doing it, they're likely to follow that general pattern, and that makes it more difficult for you as a business to manage what's happening, particularly with socializing between groups. So with NHS Test and Trace, you must legally have a QR code and a poster. You can use your codes from before, or if you need a new one, then I provided you with the link beforehand. The changes this time is that each person in a group over the age of 16 is required to check in and provide their individual details. Under 16s are not required to provide any details. This change that each person is required to provide the information is different from last year, when one person in a group was allowed. So please note that going forward. So no other restrictions on opening exist other than your normal licensing and planning restrictions. With outdoor seating, there's the rules for shelters are the same as for the smoking shelters. Basically, but marquees, gazebos, any structures that you are looking at with a roof will need to have at least 50% of the walls, perimeter walls, open permanently. Doors and windows are not classed as open. So that means a gazebo or a marquee with 3 walled areas closed will not be acceptable. So at least 50% of the outside walls will need to be constantly kept open. So a couple of examples of what's acceptable and what isn't, but also to think about where you're positioning your structures. If they're within 1.5 meters from a walled or a solid fence area, it means, and you've got the side open, it doesn't really help because you're not allowing a good circulation of air. That wall or barrier or fence will just act as an additional wall. So you need to think about where you're siting marquees, gazebos, etc., and how big those are, and any seating within those areas, you need to consider the social distancing of those, and we'll come to that in a second. So the current guidelines say that to open indoors or outdoors, seating and tables have to be socially distanced, and the guidelines are 2 meters apart or 1 meter with mitigation where 2 meters can't be undertaken. And this is between groups, so different households or your group of 6. So side-to-side tables outside will be allowed as long as they're 2 meters away. Back-to-back offers a mitigation, and therefore is a mitigation, and therefore it needs to be just 1 meter apart. But the measurements should be between customers sat at the tables, not from the edges of the tables. Just check that I haven't missed anything. So live entertainment in beer gardens. Well, What entertainment can you offer outside? Well, background music and TV screens for sports, for instance, will be allowed outside, but the volume will need to be kept low. Any screens you have, make sure that the plug sockets and plugs are suitable for outdoor weather. And from a health and safety point of view, you do need to consider that. And live performances can take place? Well, the current guidance is that performance events are restricted to certain types of events and drive-in scenarios only. So at the moment, they won't be allowed at hospitality venues. We are awaiting further information for outdoor events in any case. When you're thinking about outdoor hospitality and you're putting marquees, gazebos or any outdoor structures, and you'll have more people outside, hopefully, just think about noise from people using these areas. Can it be causing a problem to neighbouring properties? Will there be light pollution to people in neighbouring properties if you've got additional structures with lights for nighttime use? Is the proposed location safe for the users? Is there a problem if the structure is built on something like an active car park? So you'll need to think about safety. Will they be robust enough to withstand strong winds and weather conditions? The last thing you want is a gazebo on a windy day to be taken away. Remember, you can't pull the sides down if it starts raining. Those will still need to remain open. And with any of this outside areas, think about other scenarios such as children's play areas, which again will need managing. So, okay. So with retail opening, again, there's some key points. Customers to wear face coverings unless they are exempt. You will need a sign requiring customers to wear face coverings indoors, and you need to think about how you're going to be managing customers who refuse to wear one, and need to think about, well, if they are exempt, then you can't restrict them from coming into your business. You don't have to ask for a reason behind it. They don't have to provide that. But if they say they're exempt, then unfortunately you will have to accept that they are exempt. What's key is that you inform your customers about what your rules are. So clear signage with capacity levels in your premises, so control the numbers. Think about distances and the distance of 2 meters or 1 meter plus. Distancing markers to help customers with the social distancing and queues. We've got lots of those in our business toolkit. One-way movement depending on your premises. Sometimes it's not possible, so this is where we say think about your individual premises and what can be accommodated safely. Encourage the use of hand sanitizers. Make sure they're always available and accessible, not hidden behind doors, hidden behind trolleys. Provide sanitizers and disinfectants for any baskets or trolleys that you're using. Encourage contactless payments if you can. And for the moment, fitting rooms will still be required to remain closed. So for staff, in customer-facing situations where staff are in close proximity to customers, staff should be wearing face masks. Not face visors, but face masks, and they do need to be covering their nose and mouth. Behind any service counters or back of house, you need to think about house staff, if they're not from the same household, so they're from different households, what the risk of transmission is between them. So you need to make sure that you're managing how they are working in close proximity to each other. So therefore, Staff should be wearing face masks if they're working less than 2 meters apart, if there aren't any other controls. Staff should be wearing face masks when working with a mixed group of people from different households. So if you've got a mixture of staff, then that's where face coverings help. They should be wearing face masks if there isn't a screen separating them from their customers. If there is a screen, but they are from a mixed household, then masks should be worn. If any of your staff are exempt, then include this in your risk assessment. Think about how this will keep them safe from coronavirus, because the responsibility will be for you to consider how they work at your premises. You may want to think about having, if you've got a small team or particularly if you've got a large team, think about fixed teams or partnering to reduce any workplace contact. And this isn't just for retail, it applies to every other business as well. Think about what happens during break times and rest areas. Do these controls fail? So we've found that in the past that people are managing the controls at the front of house, but as soon as they go into their rest areas and storerooms, social distancing, mask wearing, hand washing all tends to fall. So think about these fails. Are staff still social distancing? Have you got shared items or touch points that need to be regularly cleaned or between use? Are cleaning materials easily at hand and available? Are you still encouraging hand sanitizing and hand washing behind the scenes? Make sure you're training and instructing your staff in any of your renewed controls, because they need to know what your new rules are. And again, how you'll be managing symptoms within for coronavirus within staff. So key points for returning to work is make sure you train and instruct your staff on your rules and control measures and how you will manage customers who don't follow your rules. It will be challenging. There will be people who don't like being told what to do, but it is your business, so you need to safeguard your business. And if there is anything that as a council we can do, we will try. But generally you will need to think about how you can do this as a business. So for close contact services, what do we mean by that? These are hairdressers, barbershops, beauty businesses, nail bars, tattoo studios, microbladers, tanning places, any spas, massage premises. It could even be dress fitters, tailors, photographers, anybody who works in close contact with customers and members of the public. And it also applies to mobile businesses. So if you're going to somebody's house or care homes, for instance, or you're doing vocational training environments, then these are all close contact establishments. And what's important is all the common themes that we've talked about and the priorities, they still apply. So it is important with close contact services to think about your risk assessments, review them, think about your control measures, review those, make sure you're training your staff and instructing them in your new controls, make sure the signage is clear and reviewed. Cleaning is still important. In fact, here, increased surface cleaning is even more of an issue, because if you're a hairdresser or a barber's, you need to be cleaning down chairs and any equipment, scissors, combs, etc. You need to be cleaning those between client use. Think about the most effective disinfectants that you can use that are most appropriate to your type of setting. Again, back of house, think about the rest areas as we've talked about before. We have had cases in the past where, because those controls have basically fallen apart when staff are going behind into their rest areas, that's where they've actually contracted the virus from each other, which has then had an impact on the business having to close. Think about social distancing, even more vital with the 2 meter distances or 1 meter plus. Think about the same or fixed teams on each day. Think about barriers between workstations. So in a hairdresser's or in a tattooist's, if you've got different workstations, you do need to make sure that the barriers that you have are of a substantial size and sufficient to prevent sort of aerosol movement. So having something that just sort of fits is too narrow may not be sufficient to prevent aerosol transmission between different workstations. There should be 1 meter higher than your head height and a foot higher than your head height and a foot side on as well. So they need to be substantial from that point of view. Ventilation, again, key. So any air conditioning, ventilation should have a fresh movement of air using fresh air, not recirculating air. Doors and windows should be kept open to assist with air circulation where you don't have air conditioning, for instance. QR codes will still be needed. And as before, the procedures for staff and customers in relation to if they've got symptoms, you still need to consider those. And again, communication, being clear about what your rules are for your customers to know what to expect is still important, and how you put those forward is going to be really important. So don't forget about social media. That really does help. So signs will be required to be displayed. So for face coverings. So in close contact services, remind your customers to wear face coverings. Now we do get things like from hairdressers and barbers saying, well, when you're having your hair cut or your hair coloured, you know, you've got to remove your face covering. Well, what you can do is remove any sides down, but still keep the face covering on. If you're having your hair coloured, then a customer can replace that. Make sure they've got spare face coverings, face masks, so that they can change those once the hair colouring is done and washed. They still need to keep the covering on their face. They can do that by holding on to it. There are ways and means of doing it, but not having a face covering when they're required to have it is not going to be acceptable. For staff, the guidance still suggests that you must wear a face mask and a visor. Why is that? Because of the longer periods of time that these type of premises, you're in close proximity to a person's face, mouth and nose. If anybody is exempt, if a customer is exempt, then please clearly state that in your risk assessments and record this. So if your staff member is exempt, make sure you're recording this. It's a good idea to put up a notice to advise customers that if a particular staff member is exempt. So other areas from the 12th of April, for instance, self-contained accommodation. So holiday accommodation on a campsite or caravan park. From the 12th of April, they will be allowed to provide shared facilities such as washing facilities, toilets, water points and disposable points used by guests. Anything else, so if there's any other entertainment complex, etc., they are not allowed to be open at this moment in time. And most outdoor attractions will be allowed to open again from the 12th. and including drive-in cinemas and drive-in performances. So certain types of theatre type performances, which are drive-in performances, will be allowed to take place. But currently we are considering all events on a case-by-case scenario. So please contact us if you're thinking about having events of any sort, so that we can have that discussion with you and keep you informed of what's going on at the present moment. We are awaiting further guidance on this for other types of events, and we know that they are businesses who are looking to put these events on and have provisionally put dates in. But please contact us, because between ourselves and the police, we are looking at what events are taking place and trying to assist businesses with those. Reopening of indoor leisure. It's such a vast area that I think I would probably be here for another session. So, but I think the guidance is quite clear, and the guidance that exists is able to support you with that. If there is any particular questions that individual businesses have in terms of indoor leisure, then please, I would suggest contact us so we can talk to you about your particular business and the advice that you may want. So from the 29th of March, so from Monday, businesses who are hosting childcare and supervised activities for children are able to host outdoor children's activities. So outdoor children's activities, supervised, organised, are allowed. Organised parent and child groups for up to 15 people is allowed, but and they don't count any children under the age of 5, and these will be again outdoor groups. So we're currently in step 1. And in step 1, the following is allowed. Indoor play areas and indoor play centres can be used by persons who have a disability. So disabled individuals, it doesn't say children or adults, it just says if persons having a disability. Those sort of premises can allow those individuals to use those facilities, but you must have the relevant controls in place. One of the things we've been asked about is, what can we do as a local authority? Well, we will try and assist you as a business, and we will try and assist and manage any other expectations. But one of the things about managing people and your customers in particular is getting a buy-in from them. And we find that communication has been key in all of this. If your customers know what is expected of them and you are clear about that, then they are likely to you're likely to get that buy-in from them. So be clear about your rules. Think about the social media, Facebook. Use that prior to reopening. Tell them what you're intending to do and what you'd like them to do. Yeah, please encourage them to come out, yes, but please make sure that they know what they should be expecting. Use posters, pictures. If you've got screens, I've got internal TV screens there, because when you're allowed to reopen on the 17th, hopefully you can use those. But certainly outside, use posters, pictures, use social media, and tell them, just advise them what you would require of them. Signage, you may have several doors to your premises. Which one is going to be used as an entrance? Which one is going to be used as an exit? Is it clear which way to go in and out? Is there direction markings, arrows? It doesn't need to be overly done, but you just need to be making sure that people know that when they come in, they know which way to go. Particularly if you're having access into the rear areas of your premises, for instance, if you're a pub, that you need to tell them which way to go. Any other business, the same messaging will apply. And I don't doubt that it's going to be challenging for businesses, but it is something that you need to seriously consider. So to try and basically to try and reduce the spread of coronavirus and to help restart your business safely, this is what our intention is. And if you'd like any further assistance or clarification on any COVID measures, then please contact us. Our email address is env.commercial@staffs.gov.uk. So hopefully that will help with that. Okay, I'm going to just end the slideshow there and go back to Grant.
Jasmine, we have had one question come in, which is how many customers are allowed in my cafe for takeout coffee?
So again, it depends how big your coffee shop is, your takeaway premises is, how many people can safely queue within the premises. So you've got to think about the 2 distance rule, 2 meters, and then decide how many people can safely queue up in your premises.
That's it. That's all the questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jasmine. Councillor Lees, I think you wanted to close the session for us.
Yes, thank you, Grant. What a complicated area. I hope everyone's gained information from this and it's going to allow them to open safely. And can I remind you what's been said? If you need any further information, please contact us. We're here to help you. We want you to open safely and we're here to help. So please contact us. So all that's left for me to do is to thank Jasmine for the presentation and all the other stuff that put towards it, and remind you to follow the rules and stay safe. Thank you all for attending. Good morning.